think, Michelle, with Fosse Vernon, I think one of the things that's sort of come up is that we're all so aware of Bob Fosse and his story. And I think we weren't as aware of Gwen's story. And I think that over the course of the creation of this show, her role became, I believe, a bigger piece of it, and a story that was worth telling. Why do you think it's the case that we know the man's story? What does that say about our culture? And how important was it to explore both stories?
Well, I think when the project was initially developed, it was just called Fosse. And that was about 2 years ago. And I think about, a year into developing it or something, they realized that they actually wanted to tell both of their stories, which was after meeting their daughter, Nicole Fosse, who said that she would be involved in it, but she gave them so much information about who Gwen was that they said, oh, we should make this about two people instead. But I think it's a lot of what we're talking about. Gwen aged out because she was primarily a dancer. They say like a dancer dies two deaths, when you actually die and then the day that you can't dance in the way that you used to be able to dance. And so she had that creative death. And so her story it goes more quietly. And if you're lucky enough to talk to people who knew her, of course it didn't. She continued to live a very full life, and she taught, and she choreographed, and she recreated his work, and she restaged his work. But in this creative burst that they were living in while she was still an active dancer and actress, she was sort of written out of the story. And the show attempts to rectify that.
You became a sort of a face of a movement, and your experience on All the Money in the World became an experience. I mean, it wasn't just your story anymore. It became the world's story, and you became someone that Hollywood was outraged on your behalf. What did it feel like to be in the middle of that?
It was interesting. So I went to DC recently to speak on pay equality, and it all happened very quickly. I'd become friends with, when we went to the Golden Globes and we took these activists as our dates, we all became friendly and we all just sort of stayed in touch. And one of them reached out to me and she said, hey, are you available in 3 days to come down and do this thing? And I said, for you, yes, I'll get rid of everything else I was supposed to do and I'll come. What is it? What's going on? What am I doing? And she's like, just write a quick thing and you're just going to say a quick thing and then you'll go. And so I was like, okay, sure.
Famous last words,
Yeah, and it was a much bigger sort of platform than I had even realized. And something that was interesting that was said to me there was that they were so grateful for me coming to tell this story, because it's hard to see when you're talking about sort of $10 versus $14. People have a hard time hearing the difference, but when you use an example as extreme as mine, it really brings the entire case to come home to rest. You can really, the larger example, can speak to the other examples. So it's been, I would say, as far as anything that's happened in my life publicly, it's the most exciting and most important thing that I've ever been involved in. And I'm so moved, personally and professionally, to have found my place in the conversation and my voice through the conversation, and to feel like I've grown up inside of the conversation. And it's the thing that I'll, feel the closest to more than any work that I've ever done. Being able to, if I can just incrementally move the needle for other women.
Have you seen the response to you change in the process as you take new jobs, as you walk into rooms?
I don't know if everybody feels like this, but I just feel like the dynamic on sets has changed. I don't know if you guys experience the same thing.
In what way?
I feel like the workplace, I've said before, but they don't hug you anymore.
Morning!
Yeah, you don't get a morning grope. You get a morning handshake. That's been my experience recently. And I just feel like more space has opened up in the room, in the actual creative process, when you're sort of in the figuring out of things. I feel like I'm heard in a different way. Not even heard in a different way, that the space has opened up for me, but to be able to be heard.
Nobody will be surprised if a woman speaks out now on certain things.
Yes.
Yeah, and that has changed, yeah. it's a corrective moment in the culture. There's no question, and
Sure.
certainly in our industry.